What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Aether Hour. This time we have a special guest with us. We have Francis, who is our marketing director. So, this will be a fun discussion. I feel like we've talked a lot about development, but this time we thought it would be fun to talk about marketing, especially for indie devs, because I feel like it's like a subject that is not talked about a whole lot. You kind of have to go digging quite deep to get some real legit answers. And Francis is a veteran in this industry, so it'll be nice to hear his experience and sort of how he's gotten to where he is today, and maybe how things have like changed over time. So, Francis, do you want to maybe like tell us a little bit about your experience and how long have you been in the industry?
Yeah, sure. So I started in the industry in 2008.
Okay,
I had just
that's a
finished up
great
business
year
school.
to start starting an
Oh
industry,
yeah,
right?
everything
You
was
and me both,
just
Francis. You and me both.
everything was falling apart. It was doom and gloom, but I just finished business school. I moved out to California to work in video games and was just applying to every single company
Mm,
within like the 50-mile radius and trying to get my foot in the door anywhere. I was doing cold calling as a job in the meantime, just to make ends meet until I could find something. And luckily, I was able to find an internship at THQ,
mm.
which was a company at the time that would sell a lot of Nickelodeon games as well as the wrestling and titles. So that's where I got my start in channel marketing. Worked there for a few years, moved over to brand marketing, and then eventually I started working at Versus Evil
Hmm.
in 2014, and I worked there for over 10 years, and then has have been doing working with indies ever since.
Nice. And getting your foot in the door. I know you were just kind of like applying everywhere, but what was kind of like a standout thing that you could speak to? Do you feel like that you're like, I'm the guy for the job? Because we've talked about this before. Some of these other disciplines like art, it's like you bring around a portfolio, and it's a little bit more visual what you can show off to show you can do. So is it more just like your personality, or was there, was it the cold calling that you brought as like experience, to the first job?
Sure. So I think, especially at the time, a demonstrated interest in video games certainly helped. I had been going to all the IGDA Boston meetings. I had started a video games club at Boston University.
Mm, nice.
Um, and so it was very clear that I was, and most of my school projects I built around the video game industry anytime, any chance I had. And so I had a very clear goal in mind of working in the industry and could talk at least on a high level about how the industry was going,
Mm,
some of the things that were happening. And so my passion was very clear, and I had some basic knowledge of marketing and how to present myself.
nice. Actually, I want to ask you what kind of games are you really into? Because we've never really talked about this before either.
Yeah, so I mean, the games I played growing up were like Destiny of an Emperor on NES and
Okay.
Romance of the Three Kingdoms.
Okay.
So like strategy and role playing are both like in my just in my DNA.
Yeah, yeah.
I would play I worked on Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire, so
Mm,
like CRPGs. I
yeah.
have a Dungeons and Dragons game I play every week with some of my brothers. So RPGs, um, strategy for the most part. I really like indie games though. There's a lot of the Versus Evil titles that I worked on weren't in those categories that are really really fun.
Hmm.
I like roguelikes quite a bit. So yeah, if I'm stuck on a game, that's a lot of times it's like a roguelike or an RPG. Like if I'm
Nice.
if I'm like playing more than I should,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
usually one of those. Also into like Civ style games.
That's cool. So probably when you
Yeah,
saw Aether and Iron, you were like, oh, this is gonna be right up my alley.
yeah. It's super easy to dive into. There's so many cool parts, and like the tactical car combat for me is like, oh, this is new and different.
Hmm.
And the setting itself is new and different with a new story, which is always great. So
Yeah.
I gravitated to it right away.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, And in terms of like starting more AAA and transitioning more into indie, how do you feel like the marketing strategies differed, or was there a lot of crossover?
Oh, they differ quite a bit. With AAA, especially with games like WWE, and I also worked on UFC. They were very we had a lot more retail focus,
Hmm.
and the timelines for retail are a lot different than you experience with indie. You're also working with a sales cycle that was a lot different. Where
Because
we
you have
were,
to have a printed disc like months and months in advance,
you
right?
have to have a printed disc,
Yeah.
and it has to go through first party approvals.
Wow.
Um, and 2008, there were we were still mailing things.
Mm.
You don't have the digital submission portals for
Wow.
everything.
Yeah.
So you're mailing stuff to not only first party approvals, so like Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft. You're also mailing things to the ESRB and trying to get different footage approved. Um,
Hmm.
and so everything just takes longer. Communications took
Yeah.
longer. Yeah, and there's things
And
would need to be ready a lot faster. You'd have to account for production timeline, like physical production timelines, and any variations that can happen with when humans are doing anything, whether weather or anything else. So it's just much longer lead times.
so I guess that kind of makes sense how like when in time indies started to boom, it was when things could be more digitally distributed because you could kind of pass things around a lot quicker. Like you weren't needing to do all this stuff and all of these added, I mean even just like printing and mailing stuff is like an added expense that you don't even have to consider as an indie to send something.
Yeah, I mean Steamworks started in so Steam started before 2008, but that's when they had their Steamworks program
Mm,
started in 2008.
gotcha.
And so that's really part of that shift
Yeah.
was them starting to create the tools for indie devs, which exploded over the next few years.
And how did press differ? Like when you did, was it the same thing? You had to send them a physical disc to like play the game to write a review or
Yeah, so for
whatever?
press, we'd normally do a lot more press events. So you would
Okay.
fly press in from different places and have them. So with wrestling or UFC, would typically schedule it around like a wrestling event or UFC event. Have them come watch the event, and then we would have a room set up with different kiosks for them to play the game, and talk to the devs, and then they could also usually either be talent from wrestlers or fighters that would come and talk to them as well.
That's cool. And
And there's just a lot more press at that time too. Like the video
yeah.
game, there were physical magazines that people would
Mm.
read. Uh, yeah, there's just more press outlets now that it's a lot harder to get coverage because there's fewer people working in that industry.
Yeah, oh, well, especially big time, right? It feels like maybe there's like more avenues of reaching out, but it's like you have a lot of smaller creators and stuff like that nowadays, where you're not going to get as much reach. In terms of how indie has shifted since you started at Versus Evil, like was there a big shift in marketing philosophy during that time as well, or has that kind of been similar-ish?
Similar-ish. The market was a lot less crowded. But the principles remain the same, right? You need
Mm,
to get your game out in front of people. Um, you typically don't have big budgets, so you need to be really wise about how you spend your money and your time.
hmm.
But some a lot of the similar principles though of it might be it might be different channels like Facebook is a lot less of a channel now for indies than it was back then. But you want to build a community around your game. You want to do the same kind of brand building of narrative titles. You want to show a little bit about the game up front. You don't want to show the whole story immediately. Um, the basic principles all remain the same. It's just how you execute has changed over time and will continue to change. Whatever we're talking about today is
Hmm.
going to be different
Yeah.
um, a year from now, 2 years from now.
And when you moved into Versus Evil, what was sorry? What was your position again when you started there?
When I started, I was a brand manager, and then I
Okay.
shifted over to director of strategy, and that was my title
So
for the
you
most part.
had someone at least to kind of learn from in that process, or were you kind of like coming up with a lot of the creative decisions in terms of like how you were going to execute plans?
Yeah, we were a small team, so there were four of us at the time. But yeah, there was a marketing director that I worked with, and our CEO or GM also had a marketing background.
Hmm.
So there was definitely we still had a lot of bouncing ideas off each other and trying to figure out what we think is going to stick.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, even back then, I mean, I was starting off by saying there's not a whole ton of resources for learning like games marketing nowadays, and back then there was probably even less. Like now you have some guys that are like dedicated on YouTube to discussing this kind of stuff, or other indie devs that have done it and been successful, and they can kind of pass on their knowledge. But from your perspective, what do you feel like are the big points of marketing an indie game? Like what's people talk about the difference between social media or getting influencers, running paid ads, those kinds of things. Is it all important? Is there something that's more important than something else, do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly for indies, getting your Steam store page completely right
Hmm.
is important, and um, that's one of the main things you should really focus your time and effort on, no matter what. And should be continuing to review it at least every month, if not more often than that, to see what's working and what's not working. Make sure that you have people look at it just on their own devices, and just look at it from a variety of devices that shows up differently on your phone versus and different monitor sizes, and
Mm-hmm.
making sure that like your best GIF is the one that's showing above the fold or before you have to hit more on about the game. Um, Making sure that your trailer people can jump into in the first 5 to 10 seconds. They understand what the game's about.
Mm-hmm.
Those first two lines of your short description encompass what you want people to know about the game right away. Things like that are super important, and it always breaks my heart a little bit when I see a game launch and they haven't done all of the work to get their Steam store page set up, because it's a ton of work to make the game,
Mm-hmm.
and a little bit of extra effort for that portion really goes a long way. Uh,
Yeah, I feel
so
like it's like you get towards release, especially for super small teams that don't have like a marketing person, and you're like, I just want to get it done at this point. I want to get it out, and it's like you kind of neglect the cover of the book, so to speak. Like I know there's
right,
that phrase, don't judge a book by its cover, but especially on Steam, it's like the cover is the gateway to the game. Like if especially if someone hadn't seen a trailer before, they just are coming scrolling or whatever. It's like that capsule art is like what is going to get someone to go into the page. So it's definitely,
yeah,
yeah, definitely super important.
it's yes, and the algorithm bases how your page performs for in conversion rates on how much they're going to surface you.
Mm,
And so if you're not converting well, you're not going to get as much coverage, whereas you'll get better store placement if it's converting really nicely. So it's really vital. Um, it's really vital to get that right.
yeah, and do you feel like wish lists is probably the strongest metric in terms of that algorithm boosting you? Is it just people coming to the page? Like what is like I guess the goal before launch to not you can never ensure success, but what are the things that you can look to like analytically to see what's going to help you get there?
Yeah, wish lists are certainly very important. The main trigger for the wish list is that you get emails directly to your community at different event points. So you get emails at launch, and then you get emails every time that you run a sale afterwards as
Mm,
well. And so if you have a nice wish list number prior to launch, you're going to get a slew of emails to a nice group of people that are going to hopefully prime the pump for that algorithm to take effect. Um, certainly, how you get those wish lists matter, and when you get those wish lists matter. If you build a whole bunch of wish lists and then wait 5 years, they're not going to be nearly as effective as if you're able to build those a few weeks before launch when people are still thinking about your game. Um, so that's certainly a useful metric. I mean, any data that you're able to get and convert into actionable insights is good.
Hmm.
If you're posting about certain things on social and certain posts are getting much more views or much more engagement, there's something to learn from that that you should be able to adapt to across your marketing channels. So if you're seeing certain messaging or video content really popping on TikTok or something, you might want to consider adjusting the beginning of your trailer on your Steam page
Mm,
to mirror that.
that's a good strategy. Um, and in terms of, do you have a recommendation of like when you should put your Steam page together? Is it just when you have like a final piece of trailer to show, like a polished trailer to show? Like at what point in
Yeah, I would
development?
I would say as soon as you can reasonably get your good like a trailer that's a good representation of your game
Hmm.
together, um, I would plan to announce and launch your Steam page as soon as you reasonably can, unless there's a reason for holding it.
Hmm.
Um, a reason for holding it might be you're looking for a publisher deal or some sort of first party support from Nintendo, Sony. Um, and if you're still having those conversations, you might not want to announce because they might want to partner with you and do that in a certain way. Um, or if you're submitting to certain showcases and think you have a decent chance of being a part of them, you might want to show your trail. You might want to hold until you're going to be part of that showcase and debut your trailer with them. But if not, it's better to have your page up and so that you can be pointing people towards it, um, and seeing how people react to it and talk
Hmm.
about your game, and slowly build a community that way.
Yeah, because it's like there's nothing wrong with kind of revising your wording based on feedback you've gotten as well. It's like if you keep seeing a trend of like, oh, they're always referring to my game in this way, or they're explaining it back to me in a certain way, I think you can kind of like piece together that that's generally how many people might see your game. So yeah, I definitely think there's a lot to be learned, and I think that's another thing that I've seen just in the indie space is like people wait so long to show off something that's like completely perfect, and sometimes it's maybe a little bit too late in the cycle, and then you're kind of scrambling to market, and you know on top of having to learn everything, especially for new studios. So yeah, I think having the opportunity to sort of take your time with it and just like play around with intention, I think goes a long way with marketing. Yeah, there's so many facets of it that just from an art perspective, a writing perspective, just a general business perspective as well. Is there a way that you were talking about the descriptions on Steam? Like, I know some people can go really like fluffy with their text, like what's a way, like, do you have like a strategy for how you'd piece together that little paragraph that people see?
Yeah, I mean, the first two lines I generally like to lead with describing the genre
Mm,
of game, and make sure that within that first two lines they have a sense of what genre the game's in and what makes it different from other games out there. Um, those are my general. That being said, each genre is going to be different.
hmm.
The vibe of each game is going to be different. So if you have a super goofy game, or it's more focused on humor, you might want to make that more of a you might focus on making that a joke or something that makes people laugh or something unexpected,
Mm,
right? Or if you have a mystery game, you might want to be a little bit more mysterious about what exactly the game's about, but leave a question open. So it really is something that you need to understand the specific genre you're in, and yeah, and even like the niche within your genre, and see and figure out what's going to really engage that community.
mm. You mentioned the fact of like what makes your game different from other games. I think that that's like a lesson that I've learned in my experience is like that is a question as an indie developer you have to think, you know, as you're developing the game, because I think a lot of new devs are kind of just like, oh, I'm going to make a game that sounds cool to me, you know what I mean, like, and it ends up being kind of a riff on like a 2D platformer or whatever. But it sometimes people neglect like how they can explain, like literally explain word for word what is special about the game. And it's like, you know, it's special yourself, but how do you showcase that in your development? So I think that's another thing that you know, especially new devs really need to consider. And it's funny because this is a really strong marketing element that should be kind of figured out early on. And I guess if I had to ask you a question, have you seen in your experience a dev that has succeeded just by being like the best in, you know, 2D platformer or whatever, like roguelite? Or is it like every single game you've seen that's been successful has that thing that you can very clearly be like, oh, it's this with this, or this game mixed with this game, or whatever?
No, I mean, yeah, ultimately, it's all game quality is going to be the ultimate arbiter of whether people gravitate towards a title. Um, so there's not success of like you get the description right, and then the game's not very good, and then you start successful. The game always has to be good,
Mm-hmm.
and then if you get the description right, it's going to help get you to find your audience faster and
Mm-hmm.
more likely that you're going to have successful sales. Um, I remember when it came out, Undertale. They definitely went a little bit more, goofy and jokey with some of their copy
Mm-hmm.
on their Steam page. Is one I can just think of right off the top of my head.
Yeah.
And it worked for them because it felt right for the exact type of game that they were creating, and they didn't need to describe the game as specifically of it's like this and this.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I like to look at. But there's plenty out there, and I think the main point there is it's a conversation. And so some of the things you're saying, talking about before, it's really you want to get that out there. You want to get a message out there first, and see how people respond to it, and see if they're understanding what you're trying to communicate about the game. It's a two-way street. So if you hit it the first time around, great. But if you didn't, it's not a big deal. It's totally
Mm-hmm.
fine if you change your copy. You can change your copy in a matter of minutes on Steam. So it's really about making sure that people understand what you're trying to communicate to them and testing it with real life people. And there's hundreds of millions of people, if not a billion, on Steam at this point.
Wow.
So um,
Large market.
it's a large market and it's a wide world out there, so it might not be the same as the people that are gravitating towards your game might not be the same demographic or same as you, and you'll learn about that as you talk with them.
And like we've seen these graphs that like you know, sometimes people put out and they're like, "Oh, this was a really big genre this year." And you know, these genres like, you know, barely sold any games in relation to the to all game sales, right? So do you generally have the philosophy of development that you should consider that kind of stuff, or do you feel like there's a strategy if you are going super niche, like there's a way to kind of figure it out marketing wise, like from a objective marketer standpoint? Is it like, should you stay away from certain genres, or do you just kind of, is there always a way to figure it out, I guess is my question.
I come from the optimistic view that there's always a way to
Mm,
figure it out. And looking at past data is good, right? So you're learning about what people are responding to, uh, what's working in the market right now, what price points are working,
mm,
how people are marketing their game. But if you're going into game development with that in mind, the market's going to be different 6 months from now. It's going to be different 2 years from now.
sure.
So however long it takes you to make a game, unless you can make one for the next following week, um, it's going to change, and you
Hmm.
don't know how it's going to change. So It's good to take learnings from all of that data. But ultimately, it's going to come down to some of the same fundamentals, whether you're niche
Mm,
or broad. It's really understanding why people play the type of game that you're making, and why they would play your game versus other games that are out there, and what's interesting about it for them, and then finding people that are interested in it. And so that's reaching out. Typically you magnify yourself by showcases and working with press and influencers and that kind of just general community building.
mm. Yeah, it's almost like having a very easily accessible doc as a development studio that's like, why should someone play my game? And being able to very easily answer that question, I feel like is the first step in the entire marketing process. And it's something that obviously you could start super early on, especially with like prototype testing and stuff like that. So yeah, it's crazy that how important this stuff becomes, because at the end of the day, if you're an indie dev, you're trying to sustain some sort of business, and you have to make sales in order to sustain the business. So that being said, the devs have lots of different types of budgets, and if I had to guess, generally people that are watching a podcast like this are coming from a smaller budget. So do you have advice for devs that are coming into this with like a shoestring budget, like how they would approach a marketing plan? And because people are generally spread really thin in a smaller studio, like where should they allocate their not only their funds but their time?
Yeah, I think time is a good way to think about it as well. But yeah, I mean, my view as a marketer is that you should be thinking of marketing at the same very time that you're doing your pre-planning concepting of your game.
Mm,
It should be a consideration of your design process. You should be doing market research just to understand uh, other games within the marketplace, and what people like about them, and what's different about your game, and how your visuals compare to other visuals. Um, and yeah, have that front and center of this is why I'm making the game. This is what's interesting about it. Where it's gonna be great, and there's some areas that are gonna be okay, where it's just gonna be meet the market minimum or market baseline of certain things. Maybe your UI doesn't need to be as advanced, or
mm,
I don't know what elements there would be for different genres, but that will help you prioritize different things in the development cycle. From a marketing standpoint, either depending on the size of your team, if you're a team of one, you need to be thinking about marketing. You need to rip that band-aid off
mhm,
and figure out how you're going to get this game in front of people, and try things. So if you don't have a Blue Sky account or X account, or uh, you're not talking to other people that are marketing their games, then that's something you should really just take some time and do and figure it out, because eventually you'll need to do that. You'll need to put your game in front of people, and go through that process. Other areas, like if you have a little bit of money, certainly Steam store page we touched upon. You should really have a sharp press or influencer kit that includes most of the same assets as the Steam store page. So that's making sure your trailer is really great. That's your key visual asset for the game. Um, Screenshots, logos, game description,
mhm,
basically anything anyone might ask about the game should be in one single place, so that if someone's interested in covering your game, you can send them a link within a matter of minutes.
mm.
And if they were looking for something to stream that day, they'll have it right away, and they can put something together. Versus if you have to put that stuff together, it might take you weeks, and they have definitely moved on.
Yeah. And you feel
Um,
like even
so
just having a Google Drive or something is adequate?
Google Drive is, I think, mostly what people use.
Mm,
So yeah, Google Drive is adequate. It's really having the assets together in one spot
mm.
is the important thing.
Convenience.
Yeah.
For a tool, there's the Impress.games has something called Press Kitty that
Mm,
will help you create your indie game dev press kit. And it's a bit of a form, and it's asking you, basically for everything that you need to provide in that place. So look at things like that too.
Yeah, that's perfect. I was actually just going to ask for resources on figuring this stuff out. Cuz yeah, it's like there is, I don't want to say there's a perfect way of doing this stuff, but there are things like elements to think about, like even just with a screenshot, being the developer, sometimes you might think like, "Oh, this screenshot's really cool from my game." But you have to consider it with the collection of screenshots. Is this a good representation of the game as a whole, instead of just like single ones being interesting to you, or like being a cool story point that someone outside of your company might look at and be like, I don't understand what's going on. Like there needs to be context. So that was another thing that I learned, is like having to like being able to put yourself in the player's shoes quite often, as opposed to just being the developer and knowing what you like about the game and assuming everyone already knows what your game is. It's almost like you have to dumb things down to a certain extent so that anyone can get it.
Yeah, and it's really good. Yeah, it goes back to showing it to other people and have them, have other game developers. There's a lot of indie game developers out there willing to take a look at your project if you look at their project, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so you can share those screenshots with other people and see if, what messaging they're getting from it, and if they are understanding what you're trying to communicate to them or not, and adjust accordingly. It's a lot of marketing is listening and adjusting so that you're hitting the messaging correctly.
Yeah, I have a little tangent story, but you had mentioned IGDA, I think, and that's something, if people don't know, like most major cities have a what is it, Independent Game Developer Association,
Yes.
or
Mhm.
International Game Developer Association, right? And you could just like show up and attend, and like usually they have like game jams or talks or meetups or whatever. Those are always really great. And I was making a game a while ago, and I brought our very first. This is the first time I ever showed anything to anyone, and the guy wanted to see it. He's like, "Oh, what's your game about?" "Oh, it's like this kind of genre, blah blah. We feel like it's really unique." Like I just said that, just because I felt like that. And then he plays the demo for like 10 minutes. He looks at me. He's like, "Your game's not unique." That was the first bit of
Wow.
feedback I ever got. But sometimes it's like those like harsh truths are good, because then it causes you to sit there and just like think like, huh, maybe it's not as unique as I thought. What can I do to make it feel really special to someone? And then it's like, it kind of fires you up to be like, okay, I'm going to make it so unique that no one will ever say that to me ever again, you know?
Make your head explode and your face fall off. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
um Nothing. I have a viewpoint that nothing's truly unique, right?
mm,
In our industry or just
mhm.
in general, right? Everything that's created is based on references from all the other art in the world that's been made by people. So that's I don't think it's quite an insult.
I think what makes something, the way we think of as unique is like like, especially in a big, like not a big studio, just a studio with multiple people, that like collective consciousness of bringing your own kind of experiences to the table, and it kind of amalgamates into something that only they could have, put together, even if there are things that are like derivative of other works.
Yeah.
So I think it's just like really tapping into what makes each person's experience special, that they can kind of bring to the table. So, yeah,
Alex
go
in
ahead.
chat has a question for Francis. Have you ever been on a project where you had to deal with a stubborn developer that wanted to market the game in a certain way, and you knew it would be more successful if shown in another light?
Yeah. Certainly. But for me, working in the indie space, at Versus Evil and Beyond, my perspective is this is the indie developers' baby, right? They are pouring their heart and soul, their sweat and tears into this. So, I do my best to advise and provide all of the information. Um, and but if they really feel strongly they want to take it in a different direction, then I'll do my best to support it. Is my viewpoint. With the proper cautions, and sometimes it's about getting the information. So if they're like, "Hey, we should position it like this and do it this way," and feel really strongly, it's like, okay, well, let's try that at the next event or the next marketing beat. Let's put that out there and see how people respond. And then hopefully I'm wrong, right? And I'll say, oh, you're right. That's your instincts were right. You've been working on this for 6 years, and I've joined, a year ago or 6 months ago. Um, I think part of being a good marketer is being willing to be uh, wrong and adjust accordingly, rather than putting things set in stone. It's a lot about listening. So, devs. I find it a lot easier to work with devs that have a strong point of view, and maybe they're stubborn, but they care a whole lot
Mm.
than people that are disengaged entirely. So that's a normal thing, and a lot of times it's if there's a stubbornness, then you provide the data and hash it out, and generally the products and the marketing is a better result.
Interesting. Um, One thing I wanted to touch on is physical events. Like, I know those have kind of changed over time. Like, especially for smaller indies, do you feel like that's still a good space to kind of network and to market? Do you feel like those resources are better allocated elsewhere at this point in time? Like, what's generally your feel on the physical events?
That's a great question. I struggle with this. I'm getting messages. Are you going to Dice? Are you going to GDC? I'm like, should I go to Dice? Should I go to GDC? It's really case by case. Like, if
Mm,
you have unlimited time and money, yes, you should go. Like,
mm-hmm,
great. They are really great networking. There's a lot of people there that will be happy to talk with you about your project. You'll make new connections. I really love the people in the industry, and so it is a really good industry to go to physical events too. Uh, Realities of life is not everyone has unlimited time and money, and so
mm-hmm,
then you start to calculate, well, I miss work, and so how much money am I going to miss for work? Do I need to fly there, or maybe can I carpool with someone to get to the event? That changes the calculation. Same with like a hotel. Like, is there a couch I can sleep on somewhere, or do I need to get a hotel room? Another calculation, and then it's
mm-hmm,
like the passes for events. I don't know what the GDC pass is this year, but I think it went up to something. I think it's more than 1,000 or 1,000 or something like that. Is there a way for me to get a free pass? Like
mm-hmm,
Amir Savat, his community, they give away passes. Maybe there's a way that you can volunteer or work at the event for a day and get a pass into it. Is that worth it? Or maybe you just network nearby. A lot of these events, a lot of people don't buy passes and they set up meetings at nearby hotels
mm-hmm.
and go to all the side events that can still be totally worth your time.
How would
So if
you approach setting up meetings? Because that's something that I feel like because you're not seeing it, you like might not even know that's something that's really even happening.
Yeah, so I'll put together a list of like who you want to talk to, and then I'd reach out to them on LinkedIn and
Mm,
just be, very direct, about, hey, this is who I am. Here's the project I'm working on. If you have 15 or 30 minutes at GDC, that you could spare, I'd love to discuss. And then whatever thing that you'd like to talk to them about. Just a 3 or 4 line introduction, and ask, and the worst you'll get is a no.
mm-hmm,
But most people, they'll be like, oh, I'm too busy, but I can set up a time and another, call it another time. These days doing video conferences is a lot easier, and so that's part of the reason that going to physical events is less important.
mm.
But it is, if it gets you to, like, reach out to a bunch of people and set up meetings and that kind of thing, it can be worth it, if you come in with a game plan of what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like if you're kind of weighing those pros and cons, it's like potentially getting meetings with press or something, them writing an article potentially could be seen by thousands or millions of people, whereas setting up on the show floor, even if it's a bigger event like PAX or something that has like 50,000 attendees, 50,000 people is the maximum that can see your game. Now the other side of that is if you have a really nice looking booth, you might get random press or random people that could kind of help you out that just show up. So I think kind of, if you have the means, trying stuff out and seeing what works for you. But I think being, yeah, just kind of being smart about it and like weighing like the numbers in terms of like visibility, because at the end of the day, that's kind of what marketing is. It's like, how can I show this to the most amount of people and hopefully hone into my audience the best I possibly can. So that being said too, we talked briefly about wish lists. Like, do you feel like there's actually one of these magic numbers for wish lists? Is there truth in that, or is it a case by case basis sort of thing?
It's a case by case basis because those numbers, as I alluded to before, it matters when and where you get your wish lists and
Mm-hmm.
how those were generated. If you come up with like a slick way of getting people to click on something that gives you a wish list, but they haven't really interacted or absorbed your title or got excited about
Mm,
it, those wish lists aren't going to pay off in the same way as if you had their favorite streamer play the game for 4 hours,
that's a good point. Yeah.
when you sat in the stream with them and they introduced you and you talked to this person directly. That wish list is much more likely to convert than someone that just clicked through from something. So, how the wish lists occur matters. When they occur matter. When you launch, if you're if how much activity is happening on Steam is going to matter if those wish lists convert right at your launch. So if you're launching during, like, if you launch the first day of the Steam summer sale,
Mm-hmm.
your wish lists aren't going to convert
Mm-hmm.
um, very well unless you have a truly unique game.
Yeah.
Um, so it is in context of like when you launch, what your genre is. Um, are you picked up at the right time by the right people? It all plays into each other. So there's no one magic number. Certainly, there are benchmarks that people like to use. Like, hey, if you get 10,000 wish lists, you start to get certain featuring.
Mm-hmm.
You're more likely to get certain featuring on Steam. Um, that's true, right? And if you hit like 100,000 wish lists, then your chances of getting even more and greater featuring at launch go up. But those aren't specifically driven by the wish list number, but those are just a really good benchmark to see,
I
are you
see.
converting enough people to the wish listing, and have you gotten a big enough audience? So it's a really good indicator, but I don't think it's necessarily predictive.
This is another question that I've heard come up quite often is, do you feel that, especially if you're smaller and you've launched, there's still room to be heavily marketing after launch? Or do you feel like all of the momentum needs to be built up before launch to really be successful in selling your game?
This is something that frustrates me to no end with indie devs, and I try to help people with as much as possible. You've done all the hard work. You've made this really great game.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool. Like, people like it. You might not have got the sales you wanted, or maybe you did. Um, but then there's a lot of work that you need to do, where it's like you develop a sales calendar and make sure you're participating in events and sales after that people just
Mm.
don't want to do. They want to
Yeah.
focus. They've had this other. They're probably tired of their game to some degree, and they have this other new idea that's much more fun to work on,
Mm-hmm.
and they generally don't like to put a lot of time considering, oh, well, if I put my game on 40% sale, is that going to be better than 30%?
Mm.
And running the numbers and just going through that headache, even if it makes them a couple extra $100, they just don't want to deal with it, and so they just put a number in and move forward.
Mm.
Or yeah, doing the outreach of, can I still be participating in events? Um, there is still a huge opportunity on the long tail for a lot of indie games that I think is uh, underappreciated. And so I wish more devs would spend more time after the game is launched to really continue to market their game and really put in that marketing work, because they've done a lot of the work already.
Yeah.
you do 80% of the work. Like this is like the gravy part, and you're just like completely skipping it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you feel like marketing after launch has to revolve around beats of like new updates and stuff like that, or can you market as if you had just launched? You know what I mean? Like, can you just keep running ads or reaching out to, or if you reach out to like a streamer or something, do they are they is it not as desirable because you had launched like 6 months ago or a year ago or whatever?
Yeah, so I mean, new is always better, right?
Hmm.
And so if you have something new to show with an update, that's an easier pitch.
Hmm.
Um, that being said, as we mentioned earlier, there's lots of people on Steam, many more people than you can possibly imagine, more
Yeah.
people that you've ever met in your life, more people than they've all met in their life combined.
Hmm.
So likely you're still, advertising or putting your message out there to new people, so it's still new to them. Um, So, you can still, yeah, you can still market it without any new content. Best practice is to have new content every 45 days, every 45, 60 days for like that first year after launch. And there's Steam and time that with Steam sales, and there's additional Steam featuring that you can run as well, where they will when you do a sale, you'll email all your wish list, but then there's also like on store placement that you get for updates um, that you should be really taking advantage of.
And do you feel like there's a downside to constantly putting your game on sale during these Steam sales, or is it always a good thing?
From my perspective, from my perspective, putting your game on sale as frequently as you can with the cooldowns in place
Hmm.
is totally fine. Because every time you put your game on sale for 20% or above, an email goes out to the wish lists that you
Mm.
already worked so hard to get.
Yeah.
Um, but I do caution against discounting your game too much too quickly,
Mm.
because a lot of consumers, I do this as well. You'll see a discount and then like look up what's the discounting history of the game is, and you'll say, oh well, they've discounted on, oh, there's a 20% discount. Should I buy it? Oh, they've discounted at 70% before. I'm gonna wait till they're on 70% discount, or at least
Yeah.
50% discount next. So once you start hitting those discount tiers, it does devalue your game to a degree where people will be waiting for that next sale next sale tier. So my caution would be stay around 20% if possible,
Mm.
depending on your pricing strategy. Um, and don't don't start hitting those much higher discount rates until later in the cycle, especially if you're going to be supporting it with updates, because it just means your product's becoming more valuable.
Mm. Yeah, I've seen games even be discounted to like 90%. It's like couple $20 game will end up being like $2, you know? And do you feel like that's something that is like bad for the industry to be discounting your game so hard that it almost makes games feel like they're not worth anything?
You know, I, I I don't like to say something's bad for the industry or
Mm.
good for the industry, because it's a wide world out there. And if you made a great game and you want to give it to people for $2,
Mm.
or if you want
Hmm.
to give it away for free, who am I to
Sure.
judge all the work that you put in and how you price what you're putting out there, right? Um, so but if I'm advising someone who's trying to help them maximize how much they're getting for their games, I strongly advise against doing a 90% discount, because you have to sell so many more units at that
Hmm.
discount versus 80% or 70%. The math gets really funny, um, where it's generally not worth it to do that unless you're trying to use that. If that's like maybe that's the first version of the game and you're on version 5 and you're
Yeah.
trying to use that as like the a loss leader almost to get people to into the genre. And then sometimes that strategy makes sense, but in general, going that much of a discount is counterproductive.
Mm. Mm. And
You said
yeah, go ahead, Gina.
you said a minute ago just about how many people are on Steam. So of course I had to go look that up and saw that just last month, Steam passed its peak concurrent user day. in January 2026 with over 42 million users, and say that of those, 13.5 million are in America, and over 11 million are in China, about 11.5 million in China. So, how does that play into your marketing strategy,
Mm.
knowing that, maybe only a third of the audience is American or English speaking, even?
Right. Yeah. So that's another untapped potential for a lot of games is that statistics exactly right, where only a third of people have English selected as their first language on Steam. And so there are a lot of markets that people don't localize their game for, especially indies, since you know, uh, from my experience, English speaking indies, since that's who we primarily work with. Um, and so it's really worth considering looking into avenues to get your game localized for different territories because there's a lot of people that will play games in simplified Chinese. There's a lot of people that will play games in German and French and Spanish, and a lot of times if indie games aren't localized into those languages, you might have an opportunity to get additional people playing your game
Mm.
because your competition isn't.
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, it's like it's so easy to think of our country as just like, us, but it's like there's so many people that play games, and why not spread it to those people if you can. And I think that's going back to that discussion about thinking about marketing early on. If you're a small team, you might want to consider being very light on your text. That way, when it comes to localization, you're kind of just like changing menus and stuff like that. And it's actually, now that I think about it, probably games like Hyper Light Drifter and Tunic that are like basically, talking in symbols and environmental storytelling have done. It's not That's not the only reason, but it's like that must have been so much easier to port or to localize because there's like nothing to really translate. So.
Yeah, that's a great point. So there's two parts to that. Yeah, keep your word count low if that's something you're thinking about doing,
Mhm.
and if you can, and making sure that your game is set up in a way that you can build tools around localization. I've definitely worked with an indie game in the past that would have that all of their text was baked into their art files,
Oh, yeah.
uh, and so there was just no way. There was really no way to localize it in any efficient manner.
Mm,
Um, which was a shame because it had done very well. It's just it didn't make sense at that point to redo all of the art in every language.
yeah.
So just making sure that you're set up in a way that, hey, if I wanted to put it into Spanish or Chinese or whatever other language, there might be a path to it, and you can run those numbers after you launch even.
Yeah. Um, I think I'm like kind of tapped out of questions. Gina, do you have anything that you want to ask Francis or
Yeah,
Cody?
we have about 5 minutes left. So I just wanted to ask, kind of on behalf of the audience, are there any tools or resources that you're currently leaning on, or that you would recommend to an indie developer who's getting ready to launch their game?
Yeah. Yeah, there's two I like to I really like Game Discover Co. is a newsletter that covers it's mostly Steam focused. It does handle some console. That Every week there's something I'm learning from it about what's new in the market, how different games are performing. They get real data from games that have just launched. Like they just had a newsletter on Lort, and here's what their wish lists were at launch. Here's what they did. Here's why we think they were successful. The devs will chime in, saying, what they thought of launch and what their thinking was in their decision making and whether they thought that was right or not. Um, and so it's just extremely, it's a short read, but it's extremely, there's usually actionable insights, almost on a weekly basis. So
Hmm.
that's one I think is just phenomenal. And then the other one if you're just getting into the industry or you're looking for resources, it's more of job focused. But Amir Savat has a game jobs resources center. But there's just a lot of industry knowledge there, and there's a lot of people that are willing to be mentors for people.
Mm.
That one's great because it's just a large community of people that have worked in the games industry with a ton of experience and resources that you can pull from. They also do past giveaways for different events, and so those are also super generous of them, and I've taken advantage of in the past as well.
Mm. Nice. Gina, do you have anything else?
Um, Not really. Just I guess ask our audience. If you've had any marketing challenges, to share them in the comments. If you have any questions for us or Francis, to drop those in the comments as well. I will get links to the resources that Francis mentioned here at the end, as well as the Impress website. And there are also loads and loads of subreddits and discords that I'm sure most of you already know about. But if you're not taking advantage of those places and asking for feedback on your marketing assets or Steam pages, jump into the How to Market a Game Discord server with Chris Zukowski, I believe. I'm sure if you're watching this, you're probably already aware of him, but another great resource for folks in this space.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much, Francis, for hopping on with us. This was a really good and different chat compared to what we've had, and I think it's going to be very valuable for a lot of people that are making games right now. So, yeah. And to everyone, we'll see you guys again next week. Remember, you can hop in our Discord and watch live if you're around. So we will see
Yeah,
everyone
go
next time.
wishlist our game on
Yeah,
Steam.
go
The link
wishlist
is in
Aether
the
and Iron.
description.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.